Welcome to Tycoons of Small Biz, a podcast designed for small business owners, the backbone of the American economy. Join us as our hosts Austin and Landon share insights and experiences as small business owners, active investors and operators who have started, bought, sold, and grown several successful businesses. Tycoons is powered by Backbone Planning Partners, a business consulting and wealth management firm built specifically to serve small and medium-sized businesses.
Hello, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I'm your host here, as always, Austin Peterson, coming to you live from my office here in Mesa, Arizona, where it's going to be a lovely sunny and 84 degrees today. So very excited about that. Landon, my co-host, is here, as always, from Las Vegas, Nevada, and we've got a special guest, Malcolm Peace, coming to us from Austin, Texas. Malcolm, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. This is an honor.
Yeah, glad you were able to make it. We don't have guests on the program too often anymore. We used to in our old iteration, so to speak. But with the topic for today, Landon thought it would be a good idea to have you on. He spent some time with you in Austin last week or the week before, and had some great things to say about you. So for our listeners, today's topic is how physical and family health ties into business health. And so, we invited Malcolm because Malcolm lives and breathes the importance of physical health specifically, and does some Ironmans. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and what he brings to the table. But Malcolm, just kind of give us a quick intro as to who you are and what you do in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, appreciate it. Really, really appreciate it. I first generation American. I think that's important because there's a whole history of family prior to that, prior to coming to the States, but really kind of paved my own path here in Austin. Family moved to Austin many, many years ago. And, just candidly loved being able to be in the ecosystem of a growing city. Now, at the time, it was obviously a lot smaller than it is today. And I feel like I'm benefiting on the back end. But we buy blue collar industrial type businesses, and I keep myself sane with 2 young daughters, 9 and a 6-year-old, and running Ironmans and other triathlons that are in the area. Just to, again, keep myself kind of balanced in life and keep myself clarity of mind and all those types of things. So, that keeps me busy enough. I don't know if I have much more than that. If it's not physical, social environments or something like that, whether it's playing pickleball or going and running when a friend comes into town or something of that nature, I best don't have much of a bandwidth to do anything else other than that.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, Landon and I are both parents as well. So we understand what it's like to balance that. I'm in a different phase of life than the two of you are at this point. I don't have young kids anymore. My kids are actually adults. One of my kids, believe it or not, is married and has been married almost a year now. So, life's a little bit different for me now. I have a little bit more time to get out there and do the physical things. But, Malcolm, let's start with you. Like, from your point of view, why is it important to you to get out there and do that physical stuff, knowing that you've got kids at home that could, use your time? You've got a wife that could use your time. Why is it important for you to do that? And how do you find the time to do those things?
Yeah, I mean, candidly, full disclosure, my kids will probably, through just osmosis of being around me, go into athletics to some degree, whether it's, the level that I played in college. I played college tennis. So that was kind of my initial kind of pathway. But, through osmosis, yesterday it was 5:30. We're about to have soccer practice, which I get to coach my oldest daughter. Probably the last semester I get to coach her before she ages out into other groups and stuff. And it's just started pouring. And I have to show you some pictures at some point, but we got to play rain soccer. It's just being able to have kind of that outlet of, your body can move and it feels great. And then at the same while, how do you buckle down and be successful in other ways too? So I think it becomes kind of an all-encompassing thing, right? Like, I find that people that are doing high endurance athletics, or they played at a high level at some sport or something of that nature, tend to be pretty successful off the field or court as well. And it's just by nature of, maybe we're wired a little nutty, but at the same time, we know how to put in the work over a long period of time. So I think that's the big difference. I've been able to run some really fun races, whether it be a full distance Ironman or unique ones like Escape from Alcatraz. And in all those cases, You have to be able to put in a little bit of work over a long period of time, and it tends to compound on itself. And I think business is the same way. I always tell my guys that it's not a sprint. This is a marathon, that we're going to be doing this for a long time, and then we see the results kind of pay out over time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that's a great analogy, and the comparison to business. I mean, people talk about, people use it's a marathon, not a sprint, a lot in a lot of different areas. But I think in business, it's truer than any other idea that I could think of, right? I mean, maybe raising kids, right? But, business, career life, whatever, like it's the long game, right? I mean, I've been doing this for 24, almost 25 years, what Landon and I do day to day with our clients. And, it's one of those where early on, you just feel like, how in the world am I ever going to succeed at this, right? And granted, there's an extremely high failure rate in our business. And so sure. I think probably everybody feels that. But, now 24 years later, all of a sudden, really for the first time, I feel like there's this momentum that just kind of builds on its own, right? And people are reaching out proactively to us for the first time in 25 years. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to play that long game, and it's a great analogy to business. So appreciate the comments there. Landon, what about you? I mean, what's important to you from a physical standpoint, or maybe even the family side of things, the balance that you find with raising 3 almost 4-year-old twins?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. I would feel off base here if I didn't give a quick shout out to Malcolm in 2 different spirits. One was, I was in Texas, not last week, but the week before. And I reached out to Malcolm. He was just one of three people I reached out to in Austin, as I made a short trip out there. And I said, hey, would love to get together in person. And his suggestion was, yeah, absolutely. How about a run in the morning? And we can talk shop as we run. And there was some hesitation there, I'm not going to lie. But I agreed to it, and we met up. And we started on a 3-mile run around the Colorado through the center of downtown Austin, which was just a really amazing experience. And, let's say, a few hundred yards into the run, he just casually alludes to the fact that he's, an Ironman runner. And 3 miles is about the max that I can last. And that was what we had planned for. But so thank you for that. And then also, in the spirit of spontaneity, thank you for joining us today, because sure. I texted you, like midnight your time last night or something, with busy, kind of, people that are involved in, different things in their personal and professional lives. It's hard to get people to agree to doing stuff at the last second. So thank you for joining us. Austin, to your point, it's been really interesting because, I had my biological twins late in life, right? I've got a stepson who's 21. I'll be 40 in about 3 weeks. And so I've been helping raise him for 13 years. But my twins, who will be 4 in about 10 days, I had them when I was 35 or 36. And it's different, because my wife had a son at 19, and now she had 2 more at, she was 36 when they were born. So your body is in a different stage. When you're in your teens and your 20s, you feel different than you feel when you're in your 30s and your 40s and, into your 50s. And so I have definitely felt it, the last few years, just not being as active as I would like to be, just because I prioritize my time around my family. And so my physical health definitely took a toll. It's not like I gained a bunch of weight or anything super noticeable like that, but I just have not been as active the last, 4 years. And I have definitely felt it. The more stagnant that I am, the more that I feel it in my muscles, in my joints, in my bones, and it starts to affect you up here as well. You know, like I've never been a high level athlete. You know, Malcolm, I played a bunch of sports growing up. I'm naturally pretty athletic. I love extreme sports like Austin. We love dirt biking, snowboarding, skateboarding. I played soccer, baseball, basketball, tennis, all kinds of sports growing up, but I never played at a high level. I played, you know, basically up until high school. Then I wanted to party and hang out with friends, and that was what became my priority. But I'd be curious, Malcolm, to know, like, as you grew up playing tennis and then ultimately played at a pretty dang high level, like, what separated you from the people that you played with for years and years and years that kind of fell off? Just like me, like people like me, where we played competitively until we didn't, and you just continued to press on and operate at a higher level. Like what was the difference between you and the people that were like me that fell off?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would be, you know, there's two things I would say that were big, and I conscientious. I try to stay humble about this, but I was fortunate enough to be in an environment where I got to set the tone of kind of my peers that were graduating the same time as me, and we got to, you know, compete really, really hard. And I had friends that went off to play Division I tennis as well. But I was fortunate enough to be in an environment where I could kind of set the tone of what was going to happen and how we were going to lead ourselves and do different things. And by way of that is, you know, consistency over a long period of time was a big part of it. Chipping away over time was a big part of it. Kind of spoke to that already. But I also think, you know, it's funny to watch my 9-year-old. She's really into gymnastics and soccer and kind of figuring out her way too right now. And I really think I became a student of the sport. My parents would, you know, busy working, doing their thing, particularly after I started driving. I would stay late and I would have a private lesson with my coach at, you know, 8:00 at night under the lights, and practice would have ended at 6:30. So I had an hour and a half to kill. And if I wasn't playing tennis, I was sitting there studying how other players were playing that he was coaching and giving lessons to. And so, you know, I watched my 9-year-old become a student of the game and the student of kind of the craft that you're trying to do. And so I think that two things, you know, first top of mind, or a big component of it, becoming a student of the opportunity that you have in front of you, whether it be an hour and a half just to kill, rather than just, you know, this is before smartphones and all that kind of stuff. So less TikTok to get distracted by. All I got to do is just sit there and watch a tennis ball go back and forth over and over and over again, and hear the coach, you know, leading and giving instruction and all that kind of stuff. And so chipping away over a long period of time and becoming a student of your craft, I think really large and hold, you know, it allows people to distinguish themselves over a period of time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And just being cognizant that you've only got a few more minutes with us, I want to just ask you kind of a follow-up question to that. Sure. I did play pretty competitive soccer growing up. I was really small, like the smallest kid usually on the team every year, but I was super fast. Mm-hmm. So I used that to my advantage, and that's what kind of made me successful as a soccer player. But as I think back to one of the big reasons that I stopped was my parents. You know, that was a time when my parents' marriage was essentially, you know, falling apart. They weren't happy, and they kind of stripped the joy out of playing sports because, you know, I was a kind of typical, you know, little boy. I'd lose a shin guard or a shoe, or, you know, every week it was something different with me, I'm sure. So it was probably, you know, frustrating. But my parents, their attitudes towards us playing sports was one of, you know, frustration and one of, you know, not that they weren't supportive, but just their actions and their words like really took the fun out of playing sports. And that's what ultimately kind of led me to stop playing them, is this the battle kind of between myself and my mom. My dad wasn't all that involved in our sports, and it just kind of led me to like losing a desire to continue to play. So I'm curious, how did your parents support you, you know, in your efforts kind of growing up playing competitive sports?
Yeah, great question. To keep it as short and sweet as I can, my family were very busy. They were consultants. They were running around doing a bunch of IT consulting. And so my brother and I were latchkey kids, if that term can be used. We'd come home and we'd get on our bikes and go to the local club, and we'd, play tennis as we could. And then it kind of evolved from there. But we had a ton of freedom to go decide what we wanted to do, as long as it was some sort of productive activity to some extent. And my parents were pretty cognizant of our friends and had my friends over at their houses a lot of time. And I think that plays a big role into it, but that's probably a topic for another day. Truth be told, in that, I struggled with frustration and anger and things of that nature when I was on the tennis court. I would call myself a big a-hole when I was on the tennis court, and that kind of changed through college. I kind of matured and things changed. But candidly, I struggle with that too. And I'll remember I was probably about 14 years old, and I broke a tennis racket on the side post on a tennis net. And I came home, showed my parents it, and that was the last moment I ever had them buying me tennis rackets. So I started coaching, and I probably became an entrepreneur that day because I had to start coaching ex-girlfriends and little people in the neighborhood to tennis lessons to make some money. So, but I learned very well. I'll say, that, and you just in your conversation, I remember playing select basketball, and all the memories I have is just being incredibly aggressive, undersized guy boxing out. It was my way of kind of using some anger, aggression, all these types of things, and just being physical. And I think tennis was another one of that, where it's just a pure mind game, call it boxing in some ways, of just smacking back and forth, trying to figure out and solve the puzzle. And so I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful for the chance. But yeah, there's probably some anger and frustration, some cockiness that needed to get out. And that was a way to do it pretty poignantly there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great feedback. And obviously there are a couple of different directions that we can go. But Malcolm, we know you got to go. You got other things to do. We appreciate you jumping on for a little bit, and Landon and I will take it from here.
Yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate it. This is a great topic you guys are bringing up, so I love it. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, man.
Have a good day, buddy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, see you, man.
Yeah, so Landon, a couple points actually to pick up on some things that you and Malcolm said. So, I grew up in a family that didn't have a whole lot of resources financially. And so for me to be able to play sports meant that I had to go out and earn the money to buy my cleats, to buy my baseball glove, to buy, all those kinds of things, and then pay the fees to play. And so because of that, I think that I appreciated what it was that I was doing, and I was willing to put in the work and make sure that I was always there for practice, and doing different drills and everything that I could kind of outside of practice. My dad was too busy working. My mom was too busy with younger siblings. And so it was rare for them to be at any of my games. And I struggled with that a little bit in my adolescence, and wondered why that was the case. And that was frustrating. But the lessons that I learned through sports, to Malcolm's point, it's not a coincidence that many entrepreneurs that are successful in life were also athletes, younger, in their younger lives. And so, that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. But if I take and I contrast my childhood with the childhood that my kids had, right? Mm-hmm. So, if I look at my son or my daughter, my son played competitive baseball all through his life. My daughter was a competitive dancer up until, kind of her mid-teens. And, they had the support that they needed. They had, I was paying for everything. I made sure that they were there at their practices, at their recitals, at their, the dance studio time, and all those kinds of things. And I think that there's a certain extent where they took it for granted and didn't really appreciate what it was that what they were doing, and what it meant to them and would mean to them in their lives. But the other part of that is, both of my kids and me as well, growing up, I was naturally talented, right? Never truly exceptional at anything, but naturally gifted enough to do most things well. And for me and for my kids, that causes some laxness, right? It causes you to rest on your laurels and not put in the efforts to really be exceptional, because you're already good just kind of with your own God-given talent without putting forth the effort that maybe some others do. And I think that's the difference in sports and in business. It's those who are willing to put in the extra effort. Okay, I've got some God-given talents. I'm pretty good at some things here. But now if I put in all that extra work, that's where I become truly exceptional, right? Like I think of Michael Jordan, and I think of LeBron James, and I think of Mike Trout and Bryce Harper, and these athletes that are truly exceptional in their respective sports. It's because they put forth a ton of effort, not only in season, but during the off season, right? And my son, I think he's to the point where he's realizing this. He's 24 years old, and I think he realizes that he didn't put in that effort, and that's what led him to not be truly exceptional, to not have the opportunity to play baseball at Division I in college, to not be able to do some of those things, but also on the academic side, right? I mean, he's in a pretty competitive master's program now through a law school. And academics have come relatively easy to him as well. And now all of a sudden, this past semester specifically, this is his final semester, it has wiped him out to realize how much work he had to put in to be successful at this level compared to everything before. It came so easily before, and now it's like, whoa, I got to put in the work. And so it's been a pretty good lesson for him, I think. And, it's come with some bumps and bruises. His stress level's been off the charts. But I think that it's that's now going to take him into his career and realize, okay, I got to put in the work to truly be successful in my career now.
Yeah, gosh, you made some killer points there. You talked about I think you were talking about golfers, and you said something about in season and off season. And immediately my brain went to this place of like thinking about how that ties into business, right? And in business, there isn't really an off season unless you create it, right? Because running a small business, as any entrepreneur operator knows, it's pretty much go all day, every single day. I mean, for the most part. And unless you actually intentionally create that off season, right? That time when you can work on the business as opposed to being in season, working in the business, then it doesn't happen. I mean, it just flat out doesn't happen. So that was a really interesting analogy, and it just kind of made me think about the importance of actually carving out that time to where you are working on the business versus in it. I mean, that whole dichotomy has been so exacerbated these last few years with EOS and just this whole business consultancy kind of arena or area, I guess, has really blown up the last couple years, especially with social media and stuff. And so we all hear that, right? Working on your business versus working in it. But that analogy that you drew just really made me think about like how incredibly important it is to intentionally look at your calendar and carve out that time to be in the off season, so that when you're back in season, that you are that much more productive and that you're operating kind of at the highest level. It made me think about this image that I saw this morning, which of course, could have been, probably was manipulated to an extent, but it was a picture of Tiger Woods on the range prepping for the Masters. And it said something like, he's just built different or something like that. And it's him on the range with his instructor, and there's nobody else on the range. He's the only one there. But I do remember, in Tiger Woods' heyday, just listening to the commentators, and they would talk about how, Tiger would go out and win a PGA event, or he would go out and win. What are the master, the events.
Major.
Yeah. So he would go out and win a PGA event, or he'd go out and win a major. And what would the first thing that he would do? He would go like out to the range, or he would go to a sand trap and he'd just start hitting balls. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Like the best player in the world, hands down, for the amount of time that he was number one, unprecedented, I believe. And the first thing he did after he won a major was go out and practice, So yeah. I don't know, just made me think about how we translate that, over to business and how we kind of approach that.
Yeah. There are a lot of things about Tiger Woods that made him unique and different, and his work ethic was probably at the top. But if you remember, I know I'm older than you, but if you remember when Tiger Woods came on the scene, golf was kind of for lack of a better way of putting it, a fat man's sport. Like you didn't worry about being in shape. It was just whether or not you could strike the ball and hit it and, whatever, be accurate. And Tiger flipped that on its head. And, I remember being at the Memorial Tournament in Columbus, Ohio one year, standing right at the ropes as Tiger Woods is standing in this tee box, ready to tee off, and looking at him and realizing the way that he was built compared to most of the other golfers. He took care of himself. He was in good shape. He was extremely strong, and that's part of what kind of led to his downfall later too, as he used that strength, and there was so much force with the way that he hit the ball that led to the knee problems and the back problems and all these kinds of things that that he's dealt with as well. But it's changed golf completely for forever, probably, right? Because then you've got the younger players, the Jordan Spieths, the Ricky Fowler, all these players that show up and they're in good shape and they're taking care of their bodies and their nutrition's on point. He literally changed golf forever. And I think that there are some big lessons there for all of us. That kind of stuff, taking care of your body, both with physical activity as well as what you put into your body, leads to the ability to be successful in so many aspects of your life, right? And I think that the biggest thing is, moderation in all things. It doesn't mean that you can't ever have, cheesecake, or you can't, have a cookie or candy or, whatever. It's about keeping things moderated in your life, and doing the things that will kind of lead you, to be physically fit. But, one other point I wanted to hit before we, kind of run out of time, and you can weigh in on this as well, but anything in life, right? So you talk about the importance of having an off season and taking time to work on the business, right? Anything in life that's important, this is my personal belief. It's led me to some successes that I think, have come from this. And that is calendaring, right? Like, you have access to my calendar, Landon. You and I have worked together for a number of years, that things that go on my calendar because they're important to me, right? And in my morning is completely blocked out every single day. And there's, I've got things that are important to me to study and read first thing in the morning. And then that's followed by exercise. And that time is very precious. And I very rarely give that up to do other things, because I know that it's important to me, especially as I get older. And as somebody who lost two parents, a father and a stepfather, both at age 70, both within the last year and a half, both that didn't really take good care of themselves physically, whether it was the things that they ate, the lack of exercise, the other substances that they put into their body, all of those kinds of things led to them passing away at a young age. And here's the thing, like, you never know, right? Like, I take care of myself considerably better than both of them did, and I will likely live well beyond age 70. But who knows, right? I could get cancer at any point, and it doesn't matter what I did to take care of myself physically, that can still come. So, don't think that this is going to change how long you live necessarily, but it definitely changes how you feel and you live your day to day, and how you're able to be present for your business, and how you're able to be present for your family, and how you can balance all of that literally is tied to your physical, your mental, and what you put into your body.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it, man. Yeah. You know, that's something that I am great at in business, you know, calendaring things, not so great at on the personal side. And, you know, it feels kind of hypocritical a little bit because I am so good about doing that on the business side. And I believe in it and I will preach it. Um, and I will also preach it on the personal side, but it makes me just kind of reflect on, you know, not necessarily practicing what I preach in that regard. Because anytime that I do, you know, put stuff on my calendar for, you know, on the family, in regards to family and in physical health, anytime I put stuff on the calendar, it happens. But I'm not good about doing that. And I think that just in the spirit of that, I think that can be like our pro tip of the day, you know, if you will, which is, you know, you will prioritize things that are important, that are truly important to you, you know, in your life. If you say that family and faith and physical health are the most important things to you, but you look at your calendar and it reflects something completely different, well, you know, you got to check in with yourself because you're probably out of integrity. And I've been guilty of that many, many times. But calendaring, I think, is a great first step for people that really want to prioritize physical and family health, so that it can really translate over to better business health, you know, across the board. And I guess, you know, what that looks like is, you know, spend 15 or 20 minutes on a, you know, on a Saturday or Sunday, or come into the office 30 minutes early on a Monday morning when, you know, nobody's there, and throw a couple things on your calendar for the week. You know, something I do is I do Orange Theory Fitness, you know, so they've got classes all throughout the day. So I'll throw a, you know, I'll throw a class on, you know, like a Monday at, you know, 4:30 or something like that. And then, you know, you've got your activities on your calendar, you know, recurring every single morning. Well, maybe that might be too aggressive for some people, especially as you're thinking about making some kind of small incremental changes. But start with one day. Start with one day. Look at your calendar, find an Orange Theory class, a kickboxing class, a great trail to go run on, a CrossFit class, you know, whatever. Find something that's exciting to you that's like physical health, and throw it on your calendar one day a week to start. And then get into that rhythm, and then do the same with family stuff. You know, if it means throwing an appointment on your calendar for your kids' soccer practice, or leaving work a couple hours early, you know, once a week or once every few weeks to pick your kids up from school. You know, if your spouse usually does that, you know, get into that habit of being really intentional in managing your calendar so that you can start to prioritize more physical and family health things. And that will lead into more productive business health.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. You got to start small, right? I mean, Landon's right. I mean, I don't mean to sound, you know, braggart here, but 5 or 6 days a week is exercise for me in some way, shape, or form. And it's a minimum of an hour for me, but it didn't start that way, right? So start with a 15-minute walk, or start with a 30-minute kickboxing class like Landon mentioned. You know, start small and build to something greater, right? I mean, at the very least, make sure that you're walking a minimum of 30 minutes a day. You know, if you have to build up to that, great, build up to that. And if it's spread out, right, you do it in the morning with your dog for 15 minutes, and then you do it in the evening with your spouse for 15 minutes, whatever it takes. get out there and at least do some walking, and you'll be shocked at what that does to your mental health and to your focus and your ability to find more success in business.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I think we're pretty much at time here, but I'll close with this. If you're kind of asking yourself, if you're listening to this and you're asking yourself, well, gosh, like how do I get into that mindset, like to actually do something like this? And I would challenge everybody to read the book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And that I will go as far to say like that, if you let it, that book can and will change your life because it helps you to understand the framework and the methodology to develop good, productive habits. So if you're wondering like where to start, how to kind of change your mindset, read that book. And I will say for anybody that's listening, I would be happy to send that book out to 3 people. So 3 people are listening to this. The first 3 people that are listening and want a free copy of Atomic Habits by James Clear, send me an email, landon@backboneplanning.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I will order and ship out a copy of Atomic Habits totally free to the first 3 people that reach out. So any closing thoughts real quick, Austin?
No, I think that's a great way to end, and a great offer for anybody listening for sure.
Cool. Well, appreciate your thoughts. It's great to have Malcolm on, and hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks?
Yep.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, a podcast for small business owners by small business owners. Be sure to follow us on our social media channels for links to all our episodes and great content around growing, investing in, buying, and selling small businesses. This podcast is distributed for informational purposes only. Statements made in the podcast are not to be construed as personalized investment or financial planning advice, may not be suitable for everyone, and should not be considered as solicitation to engage in any particular investing or planning strategy. Listeners should conduct their own review and exercise judgment, or consult with their professional financial advisor to see how the information contained in this podcast may apply to their own individual circumstances. All investing involves risk of loss, including the possible loss of principal. Past performance does not guarantee future results, and nothing in this podcast should be construed as a guarantee of any specific outcome or profit. All market indices discussed are unmanaged, do not incur management fees, costs, and expenses, and cannot be invested into directly. Investment advisory services offered by Backbone Planning Partners, LLC. Neither Backbone Planning Partners, LLC, nor its representative provide legal or accounting advice. The content of this podcast represents the views and opinions of Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, and/or the podcast guest, and do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Backbone Planning Partners, LLC. Statements made in this podcast are subject to change without notice. Neither Backbone Planning Partners, LLC, nor its representatives, the podcast host, or its guests have an obligation to provide revised statements in the event of changed circumstances.